15-year-old Jamal Flash, Washington finds pure, kinetic joy racing through the streets of his poor but loving neighborhood, his extraordinary speed and natural gift. When his raw talent is spotted by a powerful, ruthless manager, Jamal is launched onto the world stage, trading the comfort of home for the cold pressure of elite fame and million-dollar contracts. This journey tracks his meteoric rise and subsequent ethical crisis, culminating in a junior world championship final where he must confront a sabotage plot and decide if his clean speed is worth the price of a guaranteed victory. If you liked the video and have subscribed to my channel, let's move on to our story. Enjoy watching. The smell of burnt toast and instant coffee was the morning incense of the apartment, a scent that, to Jamal Flash Washington, was the most comforting perfume in the world. It meant his mother, Auntie Loretta, was already in motion, directing the chaotic symphony of a Tuesday morning in their cramped four-room flat on the third floor of the Cedarwood Terrace building. "Jamal, get those feet moving, child, before I have to unleash the spatula of truth." Loretta's voice, rich as molasses and twice as sticky, boomed down the short hallway. Jamal, 15 years old and built like a sleek, coiled spring, chuckled as he yanked a faded track jersey over his head. His mother's spatula of truth was a well-worn wooden spoon she sometimes used for light-hearted, theatrical threats, never for punishment. It was a prop in the daily comedy that was the Washington family. He emerged from the room, a sliver of morning sun catching the deep, smooth bronze of his skin, and found the kitchen already crowded. His younger sister, Lana, a whirlwind of pigtails and sharp elbows, was attempting to feed a spoonful of lumpy oatmeal to a suspiciously patient stuffed giraffe. His father, Mr. Dennis, a man whose smile crinkled the corners of his eyes and who worked 2 shifts as a warehouse loader, was wrestling with a crossword puzzle and losing spectacularly. "Pop, 6-letter word for dizzy spells isn't pizza," Jamal pointed out, snatching a piece of the barely burnt toast before Lana could claim it. Mr. Dennis looked up, his expression a mix of mock offense and genuine amusement. "It could be a symptom, son. You get dizzy, you need to call a doctor. Doctor tells you to eat pizza. It's medical logic." Loretta appeared from the bedroom, tucking a loose braid behind her ear. She was dressed in her uniform for the community center kitchen, a white apron over a sensible blue dress, but her eyes, sharp and loving, missed nothing. "Don't encourage your father's nonsense, Flash," she said, using the nickname that had stuck since he was 7 and had outrun the neighborhood ice cream truck. "Now eat. You got school and you got practice. And you need to save some of that speed for when I ask you to run to the corner store for sugar. That always seems to be a marathon you can't finish." The easy laughter that followed was the rhythm of their life, a comforting beat of love woven through the fabric of their poverty. They didn't have much. The furniture was all hand-me-down, the walls could use a fresh coat of paint, and every bill was a careful negotiation, but the house was bursting with warmth and a kind of fierce, protective humor. They were rich in everything that truly mattered. School at Northwood High was less a place of learning and more a holding tank until the bell rang for the final period. That was when Jamal's true day began. But even the hours spent at a desk were made bearable by his crew. Miko, the resident philosopher with glasses perpetually perched on his nose, and Chaz, the class clown whose ambition in life was to make a perfect paper airplane. At lunch, crammed into a corner booth, the 3 boys planned their afternoon. "Okay, so the new Red Scroll comic drops today," Miko said, pushing his glasses up. "I've already mapped out the most efficient route to the store that bypasses the construction zone on Maple Street. It's a distance of 1.2 miles, which, according to my calculations, you can cover in under 5 minutes, 30 seconds, if you maintain a consistent 11.5 miles per hour pace." Chaz snorted into his carton of milk. "Miko, you sound like a robotic traffic cop. He's going to run fast because it's the new Red Scroll, not because you did the math. Besides, I bet I can beat him with my new paper glider. I call it the Falcon Punch." Jamal just smiled, a wide, easy grin that crinkled his eyes. "You guys worry too much. The store ain't going anywhere." He took a slow bite of his turkey sandwich. "But I do want to stretch my legs out today. Coach is prepping us for the city qualifiers. I need to feel the burn." The burn was Jamal's favorite sensation. It wasn't pain. It was the feeling of his body reaching its peak efficiency, a sweet high-octane pressure that signaled he was approaching his limit, a limit he rarely seemed to reach. After the final bell, they met outside where the world transformed for Jamal. The noise of traffic, the chatter of students, the distant sirens, it all faded into a low, ambient hum. The only thing that mattered was the ground, the air, and the next stride. The city streets were Jamal's first and best track. He loved the urban obstacle course. The cracked pavement, the quick bursts of acceleration needed to dodge a slow pedestrian, the precise rhythm required to clear 3 car lengths at a busy intersection just as the light was changing. It wasn't just about speed, it was about flow, about becoming a part of the city's frantic, beautiful energy. He didn't just run, he flew. As he pounded down Lincoln Avenue heading toward the comic store, his legs were pistons, his arms were fluid pumps, and his breath was deep and controlled. He felt the air cool the sweat on his temples. The feeling was a pure, unadulterated joy that no other activity could match. When he ran, the anxieties of his life, the chipped paint, the tight money, the stress on his parents' faces, all dissolved. He was simply kinetic energy, raw potential in motion. He was free. Chaz and Miko, huffing and shouting encouragement from their bikes, trailed behind. "Look at him go. He's a blur," Chaz yelled, nearly crashing into a parked car. "He's maintaining a cadence of 185 steps per minute," Miko shouted, holding up a stopwatch. "A true outlier." When Jamal arrived at the comic store door, his lungs were burning pleasantly, his heart was drumming a triumphant beat, and his skin was tingling. He hadn't stopped, hadn't slowed, hadn't even checked his pace. He just ran. He ran until he couldn't run any faster, and then he pushed just a little more. 2 hours later, under the harsh glare of the stadium lights at Northwood High's dilapidated track, the joy of the street run turned into the focused intensity of competition. Coach Reynolds, a man whose face was a roadmap of 1,000 hard-fought races, blew his whistle. "Washington. Relay practice. Lane 3. Show these boys how a track is supposed to be owned, not rented." Jamal was the anchor of the 4x100-meter relay team. His teammates, Marquis, Tito, and Sean, were good, solid sprinters, but Jamal was the closer, the one they relied on to make up the difference. When the baton was finally slapped into his hand, he was already moving, already exploding off the handoff mark. The other runners were already ahead of him. The anchor from the rival team, the Wolverines, had a 2-meter lead. 2 meters felt like a mile at this speed. Pound. Thrust. Breathe. Focus. He felt the familiar, beautiful sensation of his whole body working in perfect unison. He didn't think about his form. His body knew it. He saw the gap shrinking. The Wolverine's anchor, a tall, muscular kid named Greg, started to lean, his stride tightening, a sign he was pushing too hard, too early. Jamal found another gear. He wasn't just running past Greg, he was blowing past him. The gap vanished, then reversed. The roar of his teammates and the small crowd of parents became a rush of white noise. He crossed the finish line a full 5 meters ahead, coasting for 20 exhilarating steps before slowing to a jog. Coach Reynolds met him at the track's edge, a rare, genuine smile cracking the stern lines of his face. "Lord help me, Flash, you are a machine. I clocked that split at 9.8 seconds. You just ran a world-class 100 on a handoff after a full afternoon of running errands for comic books." He shook his head. "You could be the real thing, kid. Not just city. Not just state." He paused, looking Jamal straight in the eye. "You could be world-class." Jamal took a long, deep breath, the exhaustion a satisfying weight in his limbs. He wasn't thinking about world records or fame. He was thinking about the perfect feeling of the ground rushing beneath his feet, the beautiful, lonely moment of crossing the line first. "It's just running, coach," Jamal said, a familiar modesty in his voice, even as a spark of something new, a powerful, burgeoning ambition, flickered deep within him. He was just a 15-year-old kid from the Cedarwood Terrace apartments, but when he ran, he wasn't poor, he wasn't confined, and he wasn't just Jamal. He was Flash, and the whole world was his track. The journey was just beginning. The whisper started in the stands like a dry leaf skittering across the track. Coach Reynolds, a man who prided himself on hearing a false start from a mile away, missed it completely, lost as he was to the glorious irritation of having a genuine prodigy on his roster. He was too busy timing Jamal's cool-down laps, shaking his head at the effortless speed that was simply unnatural for a boy his age. "You run like that again in the qualifiers, Washington, and you'll get scouted by every second-rate college in the tri-state area," Reynolds grumbled, trying to sound unimpressed but failing miserably. "Now stretch. And put that Red Scroll comic away. It's distracting your focus." Jamal didn't look up from his hamstring stretch. The hero just unlocked his speed aura, coach. This is mandatory reading for maintaining focus. He felt the familiar, pleasant ache of muscles well used, a physical acknowledgement of a perfect training session. What Jamal hadn't noticed, and what Coach Reynolds was deliberately ignoring, was the presence of a lone figure in the highest row of the nearly empty bleachers. This wasn't a parent, a rival athlete, or a nosy journalist. This was Mr. Silas Thorne, a name that, in the elite world of track and field, was synonymous with success, controversy, and a ruthless, almost supernatural ability to spot generational talent. Thorne was leaning forward, his silver hair catching the dull amber light of the stadium. He wore an immaculate, expensive dark suit that looked utterly out of place against the peeling paint of Northwood High's infrastructure. He hadn't just been timing Jamal's relay split. He'd been timing his warm-up, his stride symmetry, his recovery rate, and even the way he tied his worn-out running shoes. When practice finally wrapped, Miko and Chaz were waiting by the gate, their comic book mission accomplished and their energy restored. "That 9.8 split, man," Chaz whistled, shaking his head. "You gotta be cheating. I'm going to petition the league to test your sneakers for turbo boosters." "The boosters are in the legs, Chaz," Jamal laughed, gathering his gear. "Just genetics and a whole lot of burnt toast." They were halfway out of the gate when Thorne's polished leather shoes hit the pavement, the sound crisp and decisive. Jamal Washington. The man's voice was low, resonant, and carried the undeniable weight of authority. It wasn't a question, it was an announcement. The three boys froze. Coach Reynolds, who had been packing up cones, spun around as if struck. Recognition, a mixture of awe and immediate panic, flashed across his face. "Mr. Thorne," Reynolds managed, straightening his posture instantly. I didn't realize you were in town." Thorne gave Reynolds a brief, dismissive nod that spoke volumes about their relative standing in the world. He kept his focus entirely on Jamal, a calculating, appraising stare that felt less like admiration and more like an inventory. "Your coach here is a good man, young Washington," Thorne said, circling Jamal slowly. "He has managed to keep a major secret confined to a minor league. That's admirable. But secrets, like exceptional speed, are meant to be shared." Jamal felt a sudden defensive heat rise in his chest. "I don't know who you are, sir, but I'm not a secret. I just run." Thorne smiled, a slight, practiced gesture that didn't reach his eyes. "You run, yes, but you don't just run. You run at a frequency that breaks the barrier between potential and certainty. I've seen thousands of runners, Jamal. You have the gait of a champion and the raw power of an engine that hasn't even hit the open highway yet. That 100-meter split? On a handoff? On this uneven asphalt? That's not a high school record, kid. That's a career." He extended a slender, silver watch-adorned hand, holding a stark white business card. The name was engraved in gold: Silas Thorne, Elite Athletic Management. "I am the open highway, Jamal. I represent the best. Olympic medalists, world record holders. I can give you a track where every surface is perfect, trainers who understand the very language of your muscles, and opportunities that are currently impossible for a boy running in worn-out spikes on a track your city forgot to repair." Jamal glanced at the card, then at Coach Reynolds, whose face was a complex mess of professional envy and genuine desire for his student's future. Then he looked at Miko and Chaz, who were staring at Thorne as if he had just emerged from the pages of Red Scroll. "What do you want?" Jamal asked, his voice low but steady. "I want to make you the fastest man in the world," Thorne said, his tone utterly devoid of doubt. "And I want the privilege of guiding you there. I can take you out of the Cedarwood Terrace apartments and put you on a world stage. I can turn Flash into a global phenomenon." The mention of his neighborhood, his home, the symbol of everything he was running for, not from, stung Jamal. He hesitated, the weight of the proposal settling over him like a sudden, heavy blanket. It was everything he'd ever vaguely dreamed of, delivered by a man who felt dangerous in his slick perfection. "I have a family, Mr. Thorne," Jamal replied. "And a coach. And the city qualifiers are next month." Thorne tucked the card into Jamal's hand with a surprising firmness. "Your family will be cared for financially and completely. Your coach will receive a handsome consultation fee. The qualifiers are a triviality you will breeze through. But let's be clear, this isn't a college recruitment. This is a professional offer. Think about it. Talk to your parents. The world is waiting, Jamal. Don't make it wait too long. He turned on his heel, walked briskly to a waiting black sedan, and was gone, leaving behind a silence heavier than the stadium lights. Coach Reynolds rushed over, grabbing Jamal's arm. Jamal, do you know who that was? That's Silas Thorne. He doesn't just scout, he cultivates. This is unbelievable. This is your ticket. Jamal stared at the card in his palm, the cool metal edge pressing into his skin. The joy of his afternoon run, the pride of the relay win, it was all overshadowed by the sudden, overwhelming pressure of a future he hadn't asked for, handed to him in a gold-plated offer. He had always run for fun, for freedom, for the love of the speed. Now, running had become a business opportunity, a professional mandate. He looked back at the dilapidated track, then in the direction of his home. His life was about to split down the middle. One path led back to burnt toast and laughter, the other led to fame in the world stage. He felt a deep tremor of excitement, quickly followed by a heavy dose of apprehension. He was a long way from the corner store now. The business card was a disruptive presence in the Washington apartment. It sat on the kitchen table like a small, white, gold-engraved bomb. Auntie Loretta wouldn't touch it, viewing it with the deep skepticism only a mother can summon for a sudden, unsought miracle. Mr. Dennis kept picking it up, turning it over and over, the gold script catching the light, the weight of the paper seeming to grow heavier each time. The family meeting was held that night. After Lana was asleep, the three of them crammed around the table that usually held homework and hurried dinners. A gentleman in a silk suit wants to pluck my baby off a broken track and promise him the world, Loretta said, her voice tight, arms crossed over her apron. That's a fairy tale, Jamal, and fairy tales always come with a wicked fee. He's not a gentleman, Loretta, he's a shark, Mr. Dennis corrected, but his tone lacked its usual conviction. He smoothed the card with a calloused thumb. But this shark has a track record. I looked him up, son. Silas Thorne is ruthless, but he gets results. Olympic gold. Sponsorships that would feed this building for a year. Jamal felt a strange detachment, as if he were discussing someone else's fate. He loved his life, the chipped paint, the burnt toast, the easy rhythm. He hadn't asked for this, but the image Thorne had painted, the possibility of running on perfect surfaces, with real trainers under a spotlight, pulsed beneath his skin like a second heartbeat. He said he could take care of everything, Jamal said softly. He said he'd help us. Not just me. He saw how fast I was, Pop. He said I was world class. The phrase hung in the air, a gravitational pull too strong to ignore. Mr. Dennis sighed, his shoulders slumping. He looked at the worn-out kitchen, the stack of bills on the counter, the sheer, exhausting effort of keeping the rhythm of home going. Look, son, we are proud. More than proud. But pride doesn't pay the heating bill, his father admitted, his voice barely a whisper. If you have a talent like this, a gift from God, you can't leave it on that dusty track. You go with him. But you remember who you are, and you remember where you came from. Loretta finally leaned forward, her eyes softened by a sudden, fierce acceptance. We sign the papers, but we don't sign our hearts over, you hear me, Flash? We read the fine print. We trust God and we watch the shark. You run for you, baby. Not for his spotlight. The decision was made. They called the number on the card. The next few days were a blur that felt less like an ascent to fame and more like a hostile takeover of their lives. Silas Thorne moved with the efficiency of a CEO initiating a massive merger. First came the lawyer, a brisk, impeccably dressed woman who spoke in paragraphs of complex legal jargon. The contract was 100 pages long, full of clauses on image rights, future earnings, and most importantly, absolute managerial control ceded to Thorne for the next 5 years. Mr. Dennis and Loretta, armed with a neighborhood public defender found by Coach Reynolds, haggled over a few key details, securing guaranteed funds for Lana's college and a housing stipend for the family, but the central truth remained: Jamal was now an asset, and Thorne was the portfolio manager. Then came the money, a substantial initial signing bonus that wiped out their debts, paid for a much-needed new transmission for Mr. Dennis's car, and, most jarringly, bought them out of the Cedarwood Terrace apartment and into a modest but sparkling new 3-bedroom home across town. The move itself felt like a surrender. As Jamal looked back at the chipped paint and familiar stoop of the old building, a strange mix of guilt and elation churned in his gut. The guilt was for leaving behind the familiar poverty, the elation was for the fresh, new carpet beneath his feet in the new house. a house that felt too quiet, too clean, and completely unearned. He realized the wicked fee Loretta warned about wasn't cash, it was the immediate, violent disruption of their life's rhythm. Within a week, Jamal was training at the Elite Performance Institute (EPI), an enormous, state-of-the-art facility 60 miles outside the city, where Thorne kept his top athletes. It was a world away from Northwood High's track. Here, the track was a flawless, springy layer of cobalt blue rubber, calibrated to absorb shock and maximize return. The air smelled of ionized oxygen and expensive liniment. His new trainer was Dr. Anya Sharma, a tiny woman with a doctorate in biomechanics and a gaze that could dissect a runner's stride in a single glance. She was professional, demanding, and strictly focused. "Your technique, Jamal, is beautiful chaos," Dr. Sharma stated on their first day, reviewing data on a tablet. "It's raw organic speed. We are going to refine it. Your power-to-weight ratio is phenomenal, but your lift phase is too high by 4.5 degrees, costing you milliseconds. And your shoes." She gestured dismissively at his brand-new top-of-the-line spikes provided by a major sponsor, already secured by Thorne. "They are the best in the world, but your feet must move with them, not merely in them." The training was brutal. It was no longer the joyous, free run through city streets. It was an exact science of sprints, weight circuits, cryotherapy baths, and a diet plan so strict it made his mother's cooking a distant, delicious memory. Thorne wanted not just a fast runner but a machine of peak efficiency. Jamal missed Miko's geometric analysis of comic book routes and Chaz's ridiculous paper airplanes. He tried to call them, but the constant travel for mandatory PR shoots and training camps made the distance feel wider than 60 miles. His first official meet under Thorne's management was a regional invitation-only event. Jamal was nervous, but his body, now honed to a razor's edge, responded perfectly. He ran the 100-meter dash and didn't just win. He shattered the regional junior record by a quarter of a second. The crowd roared not just for his speed but for the story, the 15-year-old kid from the projects who had appeared from nowhere. After the race, Thorne was waiting in the tunnel, not with praise but with a cold, clear command. "The time was acceptable, Jamal," Thorne said, adjusting his cufflink. "But your finish was sloppy. You looked around. Never look around. You are running against the clock, not against the men beside you. They are irrelevant. Focus. You are the product now. Always deliver." Jamal felt the pressure acutely, the immense, suffocating weight of being Thorne's product. He had signed the papers and received the promises, but he was starting to understand the fee. His speed was no longer entirely his own. As he was rushed past a gauntlet of flashing cameras, he saw a familiar face watching from a far corner, Coach Reynolds, looking both ecstatic and heartbroken, holding a small, crumpled piece of paper, a hand-drawn picture Lana had made for Jamal. Jamal tried to move toward him to say something, but a publicist gently but firmly guided him away. He was on the express track now, and there were no unscheduled stops. The world for Jamal Washington was now seen through the lens of a media scrum. After his record-breaking regional performance, the momentum was unstoppable. Thorne booked him on a whirlwind tour, televised interviews, magazine photo shoots, and a steady stream of elite competitions that were mere stepping stones to the ultimate goal, the Junior World Championships in Paris. Jamal, or Flash, as the press now universally called him, was the feel-good story of the season. He was the Cinderella kid of the sprinter world, the 15-year-old who went from a dilapidated track in a struggling neighborhood to the cover of Track and Field Quarterly. But with every article that praised his speed, Jamal felt a tightening coil of discomfort. The narrative was simple, clean, and entirely manufactured. The humble boy who escaped poverty. "You must emphasize the struggle, Jamal," Thorne had instructed before a major network interview. "The viewers need to believe in the journey. Talk about the sound of sirens, not the sound of your mother's laughter. They don't buy tickets for comfortable lives. They buy tickets for a victory over adversity." So Jamal talked about the chipped paint, the worn shoes, and the hunger that drove him, all while sitting in a velvet chair in a penthouse suite, a stark contrast he felt in his very bones. The new house was comfortable, but it lacked the soul of the old apartment. His parents were less stressed, but the time they spent together had shrunk to hurried phone calls between his training sessions and mandatory appearances. The most painful distance was with Miko and Chaz. He tried to visit, but the old neighborhood felt alien now. His friends were still dealing with college applications, part-time jobs, and the usual high school drama. Jamal was talking to shoe executives and worrying about his quarterly performance metrics. On a rare weekend off, he managed to meet them at a diner near Northwood High. "Look at you, man. You're famous," Chess said, nudging Miko. "You got your own energy drink now. Flash Fuel. Does it actually make you faster?" Jamal forced a smile. "It tastes like blueberries and obligation. But hey, free drinks for life." Miko, ever the observer, wasn't laughing. He noted the perfect tailoring of Jamal's sponsored track suit, the slight tension around his eyes. "You seem different, Jay. Not slower, but heavier. Are you still having fun?" The question hit Jamal with the unexpected force of a punch. "Fun? This is work, Miko. It's an entire machine running on me. Dr. Sharma measures my sleep and REM cycles. Thorne has me doing media coaching to soften my inner city edge. I have to talk about my future in 30-second sound bites. But the running itself?" Miko persisted. "The feeling when you hit the last 50 meters? Jamal paused, remembering the last race. He won effortlessly, but the joy of the run had been replaced by the anxiety of the time. "It's precise now. Perfect. I run the way I'm supposed to. I win, but I used to run to be free. Now I run to live up to a contract." The weight of the contract was immense. It demanded absolute adherence to Thorne's strategy, which, Jamal was learning, was built on perfection and intimidation. Thorne's primary rival in the management world was a notoriously aggressive firm run by Vivian Kane. Kane managed the current junior world champion, a prodigious Irish runner named Elias the Emerald O'Connell. The rivalry between Thorne and Kane was legendary, and Jamal realized he wasn't just competing against O'Connell. He was a weapon in Thorne's corporate war. 2 weeks before the Junior World Championships, Thorne called Jamal into his spacious, minimalist office at the EPI. The walls were covered not with medals but with framed stock certificates. "Paris is not a race, Jamal. It's an announcement," Thorne stated, leaning back. "You need to break the world record. Not just win. The 100 meters is your signature. O'Connell is fast, but he is predictable. His top end is a hard 9.85 seconds. Your potential is 9.70. "I know," Jamal said. "I'm pushing 9.90 consistently in practice. I'll break it." Thorne opened a drawer and produced a small, inconspicuous black pill bottle. Looked like vitamins. "This is called Noxinex," Thorne said casually. "It's a high-grade, legally sourced supplement. It enhances neurological response time by 15%, guaranteeing a blistering start. Completely legal, completely untraceable. I'm telling you this as a formality. Dr. Sharma wants you on it for the next 2 weeks. It's necessary to ensure you hit that 9.70 threshold." Jamal felt a cold drop in his stomach. The word legal sounded flimsy when spoken by Thorne. Untraceable sounded worse. "A supplement for neurological response?" Jamal asked, trying to keep his voice level. "I've never needed anything but my training." "And you've never run for $1 million endorsement contract before," Thorne countered, his tone hardening. "This isn't high school, Jamal. The margins are thinner than a dollar bill. We need the edge. This is the difference between being a star and being a flash in the pan. You're an investment and I protect my investments. Take it. It's part of the program." He placed the bottle on the desk, a silent, non-negotiable command. Jamal stared at the small black pills. The sleek, dangerous efficiency of Silas Thorne had never been clearer. Thorne wasn't just pushing him to his limit, he was asking him to cross a line that separated the pride of a pure run from the shadow of a performance-enhancing boost. He thought of his parents' pride, his own hard work, and the clean, joyous freedom of his first runs. That freedom felt miles away now, eclipsed by the pressure of this small, black bottle. The price of the promise was finally being demanded. The bottle of Noxinex felt ice-cold in Jamal's hand, even through the thin fabric of his jacket pocket. All the way back to the Elite Performance Institute EPI barracks, the little black container seemed to vibrate with a sinister energy, mocking the purity of his talent. He walked past the brightly lit, sterile hallways, the walls adorned with images of Thorne's famous, victorious athletes. Men and women who now seemed to stare at him with knowing, complicit eyes. Was their perfection bought in a similar black bottle? The weight of the decision was staggering. On one side was the promise: fame, wealth, security for his family, and the validation of that 9.70 threshold. On the other was his integrity, the clean, undeniable feeling of hard-earned speed, and the principle his mother had instilled: you run for you, baby, not for his spotlight. He knew he couldn't talk to his parents about it yet. He couldn't risk placing the burden of a moral decision on them, not after they had already sacrificed so much hope and trust to get him here. He needed the counsel of someone who understood the track, the struggle, and the price of the ambition. Someone who had no financial stake in his success. He needed Coach Reynolds. A secret meeting. Under the pretense of retrieving a box of old spikes, Jamal convinced a junior assistant to drive him back to Northwood High late that night. The dilapidated track was bathed in the dull glow of a single flickering parking lot lamp. Coach Reynolds was waiting, leaning against the fence, looking less like a successful mentor and more like a concerned sentinel guarding a forgotten post. "You took a risk coming here, Flash," Reynolds said, his voice flat, his gaze sharp. "Thorne doesn't like loose ends or unscheduled meetings." Jamal pulled the bottle from his pocket and placed it on the top rail of the fence. It caught the sickly yellow light. "He calls it Noxinex. Says it's a legal, untraceable neurological supplement. Says Dr. Sharma wants me on it to guarantee a world record in Paris." Reynolds didn't touch the bottle. He didn't have to. The air around it felt toxic. He let out a long, weary sigh. "Silas Thorne," Reynolds muttered, shaking his head. "He's a magician. He makes things disappear. Debt, doubt, and sometimes the truth." "Is it a performance-enhancing drug, Coach?" Jamal demanded, his voice cracking with urgency. Reynolds looked out at the empty lanes, the track where Jamal had first felt the unbridled joy of his speed. "Is a 15% neurological edge earned, Jamal? Is it you running the race? Look, every competitor at that level and every manager like Thorne operates in the gray area. They call it stacking the legal advantage. It probably won't fail a test because Thorne is careful. But I promise you it is cheating. It's borrowing speed you didn't train for." The words, "it is cheating," echoed in the cold night air, stripping away all of Thorne's smooth justifications. The truth of the run. "He says I need it for the 9.70, Jamal whispered, the sheer weight of the expectation almost crushing him. "He says without it, I'm just a flash in the pan." "Thorne is a manipulator of self-doubt," Reynolds countered firmly, stepping closer. "He knows your speed. I clocked you at 9.8 seconds on a handoff, and on this ground. Your natural, raw, clean speed is already at the 9.75 mark, maybe better if you can keep your head straight and your spirit clean." He put a heavy, reassuring hand on Jamal's shoulder. "What's the goal, Flash? To win with an asterisk next to your name? To stand on the podium knowing the speed wasn't yours? The joy you feel when you cross the line first, that feeling of pure flight, you think that feeling comes with a pill? No. That feeling is the payoff for every early morning, every tired muscle, every sacrifice you've made. You came from somewhere real, Jamal. You run for your family, for your block, for the love of the run. Don't let a man in a silk suit steal the best part of your gift." The choice. Jamal stood there, staring at the black bottle. It was a physical representation of the choice between a gilded, compromised future and a challenging, honest one. He remembered his father's weary labor, his mother's watchful gaze, and the genuine, proud smiles of Miko and Chaz. He remembered the feeling of being kinetic energy, raw potential in motion, and free. He slowly picked up the bottle. Coach Reynolds watched, his face unreadable. Then, with a decisive movement that felt like a sprint start, Jamal opened the bottle and emptied the contents into a storm drain near the fence. The tiny black pills vanished with a soft, final plink. A sense of lightness, a rush of pure relief, flooded through him, far more potent than any supplement could promise. He was still the fastest man on the track, and that speed was all his. "I don't need the edge, Coach," Jamal said, looking Reynolds in the eye, a small, genuine smile returning to his face. "I'll run clean. And I'll beat that 9.85 on my own 2 feet." Reynolds finally smiled, a wide, genuine smile that erased years of bitterness. "That's my Flash. Now, get out of here before Thorne's people realize you've been gone. And don't miss any training, you've got a world championship to win." As the assistant drove Jamal away, he didn't look back at the track. He was focused on the journey ahead, the Junior World Championships, where he would face Elias O'Connell, Vivian Kane, and most dangerous of all, the silent fury of a man who believed the rules of the world didn't apply to his investments. The line was drawn. The stage was set. The city of lights felt, to Jamal, more like a blinding flashbulb. Paris was a stunning, overwhelming landscape of impossible grandeur, but Jamal barely saw the Eiffel Tower or the historic avenues. His world had shrunk to the sterile bubble of the athlete's village and the immense pressure cooker of the Junior World Championships. Silas Thorne knew. He didn't need to ask. Thorne had a network of surveillance around his star athletes that rivaled a secret service, and the empty bottle of Noxanex was a testament to Jamal's rebellion. The confrontation didn't happen with shouts. It happened with a terrifying, professional chill in the VIP lounge of the team hotel the day they arrived. "I see your commitment to the program is not absolute, Jamal," Thorne said, not looking up from a financial prospectus. His voice was dangerously quiet, lacking its usual performative charm. "Disappointing. We had a trajectory, a clear path to 9.70 and a seven-figure shoe contract. You chose sentimentality over certainty." "I chose to run clean, Mr. Thorne," Jamal replied, holding his ground, the memory of Coach Reynolds' steady gaze giving him strength. "The win will be mine, not the supplements." Thorne finally looked up, his eyes like chips of granite. "Your naivete is costly, boy. You think this is a fairy tale about heart? This is a business about time. You will win because my investment cannot fail. But I promise you, that extra fraction of a second you've discarded will be the hardest you ever have to run. And when you realize you could have been faster, richer, and easier on yourself, you will regret this moment." The chilling indifference in Thorne's threat was worse than any anger. He had detached himself emotionally from Jamal, confirming that the relationship was purely transactional. The rival, Elias O'Connell. The immediate pressure was internal from Thorne, but the external threat was Elias O'Connell, the reigning junior world champion, managed by the aggressive Vivian Kane. O'Connell was everywhere, on the stadium banners, in the hotel lobby, and certainly in the lanes next to Jamal during the mandatory practice sessions. Elias was a year older, golden-haired, and possessed a quiet intensity that matched his brutal speed. The media had framed the final as the clash of narratives, the gritty American underdog against the polished Irish champion. During the final pre-race warm-up, the two were assigned adjacent lanes. Elias finished his drills and walked over to Jamal, a genuine curiosity in his blue eyes. "So you're the American Flash," Elias said, his accent a quick, rolling rhythm. "You've got a fantastic drive face. But you're pushing 9.9 in training, I hear. That won't do for the podium." "My time in training is my own business," Jamal countered, tightening the laces on his spikes. Elias shrugged, a faint smirk playing on his lips. "It becomes my business when I'm running next to you. And I'll tell you what else is my business. Vivian Kane knows everything about Thorne. She knows how Thorne prepares his athletes, and she knows what Thorne does when his athletes go rogue." He paused, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "She's been talking to the officials, making sure everything is above board for the 100-meter final. If you're planning any last-minute surprises, the spotlight will find them." The implication was clear. Elias and Kane knew about Thorne's methods, and they were actively watching Jamal. O'Connell wasn't just warning him about the race. He was adding another layer of psychological pressure, trying to make Jamal doubt his training, his speed, and his manager. The final draw. The night before the finals, the official lane draw was announced. Jamal was placed in lane 4, the power lane, typically reserved for the top seeds, a nod to his spectacular regional times. Elias O'Connell, the favorite, was in lane 5. They would be side by side, forced to look across at their direct rival in the critical final seconds before the gun. As Jamal looked at the starting list, he noticed a late, surprising addition. In lane 2 was a runner he barely knew, a relatively unheralded sprinter from a small African nation. This runner, however, was managed by an associate with a known, shady connection to Silas Thorne's firm. It was an anomaly, a last-minute replacement that made Jamal's stomach clench. It felt like Thorne had positioned another piece on the board, a contingency plan now that his star piece had refused the supplement. The air in the village was thick with anticipation. Jamal retreated to his room, away from the cameras and the noise. He pulled out his phone and stared at the home screen, a picture of his family huddled together on the couch, laughing. That was his flash fuel. That was his reason to run clean. He sent a quick message to his friends. "Tomorrow. I run for home." Miko replied immediately, "Run hard, Jay, your time is irrelevant." Your heart is the only clock that matters. As he lay in the dark, the noise of Paris muffled outside his window, Jamal felt the full weight of the World Championship final. The career on the line, the financial future of his family, Thorne's wrath, Kane's watchfulness, and the daunting presence of O'Connell in the next lane. But underneath all of it, a core of quiet certainty settled in. He had shed the false promises. Now it was just him, his clean speed and 100 meters of unforgiving track. The roar of the crowd in the Stade de France was a physical force, a tidal wave of noise that swallowed the sound of his own breathing. Every seat was filled, and the energy of the Junior World Championships 100-meter final pressed down on Jamal like the weight of the world. The lights were blinding, the tension a tangible thing. Jamal in lane 4 focused on the track ahead, a flawless cobalt blue ribbon stretching into eternity. To his right, in lane 5, Elias O'Connell remained a picture of icy concentration, not a flicker of doubt in his posture. But it was lane 2, occupied by the last-minute entry, that drew Jamal's attention. The young man, skinny and nervous, kept glancing toward the starting blocks with an unnatural, skittish energy. It was a distraction, a deliberate break in the routine of absolute focus, and it was an anomaly Jamal knew was orchestrated by Thorne. On your marks. The starting official's voice cut through the noise. On your marks. Jamal stepped into the blocks, the sharp metal cleats of his spikes gripping the surface perfectly. He lowered himself, his hands placed precisely behind the line. This position felt like a crouched tiger, coiled, ready to unleash months of clean, pure, hard work. He centered himself on the image of his family, on the memory of the joy of running free. A fleeting movement caught his eye, the runner in lane 2 who was already twitching slightly, his weight shifting forward. Set. Every muscle in Jamal's body tightened. His hips rose. The world narrowed to the sound of his own heart pounding and the sight of the starter's gun. He achieved absolute stillness. Then it happened. A sharp, undeniable movement, a fraction of a second too early, came from lane 2. Crack. The gun fired. But the noise was immediately followed by the dreaded, ear-splitting second shot, the universal signal for a false start. The double trap. The runners pulled up sharply, the momentum of their explosive starts wasted in an instant. The crowd groaned in disappointment. The official immediately approached lane 2. But the runner there, feigning agony and clutching his hamstring, was already on the ground, rolling and shouting. The officials, witnessing what looked like a catastrophic injury, became focused on the theatrical display of pain. Jamal watched the scene unfold with a sudden, chilling clarity. It wasn't a false start, it was a sacrifice. According to track rules, a single, deliberate false start results in disqualification. A second false start disqualifies the perpetrator. Thorne hadn't risked his own runner. He had sacrificed a temporary pawn, a young athlete whose 15 seconds of paid drama served a dual purpose. Asterisk, it eliminated the runner in lane 2, who was already faking an injury. Asterisk, more importantly, it ensured that the next runner who committed even the smallest infraction, a nervous twitch, a slight lean, would face immediate disqualification. Jamal realized the true depth of Thorne's malice. Knowing Jamal had refused the drugs, Thorne was trying to win the race for him by cheating out the competition, or at least, making every single runner on the line run with the crippling fear of instant ejection. Thorne was forcing his investment to succeed, even if he had to rig the field. The redo. The runner from lane 2 was stretchered off, taking several tense minutes. The starting field, now 8 men wide, was dangerously on edge. They had to run on a hair trigger and a razor's edge of concentration. Jamal felt the weight of the false start, but he let the anger clear his mind. He wasn't running just for a medal now. He was running to defeat Thorne, O'Connell, and the creeping culture of compromise. He would run the race his way. On your marks. Jamal lowered himself again. Focus on the gun. Block out the crowd. Run for home. Set. Silence. Absolute, terrifying silence. Every runner was a statue, rigid with fear of movement. Crack. This time the start was clean and perfect. Jamal exploded from the blocks. His start was powerful, clean, and lower than he had ever run it, channeling every ounce of his adrenaline into pure drive phase. He surged forward, his legs pistons, pushing past the 30-meter mark in the lead. At 50 meters, his transition was flawless. He felt O'Connell, a massive wave of speed, pull even with him in lane 5. They were neck and neck, Two champions running a world-class pace, neither giving an inch. At 70 meters, O'Connell's face was a mask of desperate focus, his stride beginning to tighten. Jamal, fueled by clean speed and righteous fury, felt the famous burn, but it was a comfortable fire. He maintained his form, his body responding with the efficiency Dr. Sharma had trained into him. He heard the faint roar of his mother's voice in his mind, his father's laugh. At 90 meters, Jamal found the final, secret gear. He surged ahead, his chest crossing the finish line, a clear, beautiful winner. The clock flashed, 9.78 seconds. A new junior world record. The stadium exploded. Jamal slammed his fists on the track in pure, unadulterated relief and triumph. He didn't just win. He ran a time that was fully, perfectly his own. Elias O'Connell, who finished just behind him at 9.82 seconds, came over, panting, and offered a curt, honest nod. Fair run, Flash. You didn't need the magic. But before Jamal could truly soak in the victory, a figure detached itself from the VIP area and strode onto the track. Vivian Kane, Elias O'Connell's manager, flanked by two stadium security officers. She was heading directly for Thorne, who was standing at the edge of the track, a look of cold, calculating satisfaction on his face. The win was secure, but the battle was far from over. The celebration of Jamal's new junior world record, 9.78 seconds, lasted less than a minute. The moment he stopped running, the real race began. Vivian Kane, the manager of the silver medalist, Elias O'Connell, was relentless. She bypassed the official media zone and marched directly to the area where Silas Thorne was already barking into his phone. The false start in lane 2 wasn't an injury, Thorne, it was a sabotage, Kane spat, her voice tight with fury, drawing the attention of reporters and stadium officials. Everyone knows that runner is a clean sprinter who had a sudden contract with a shell company you control. He took a dive to force a second-chance disqualification. You were trying to rig the field for your golden boy. Thorne, ever the master of composure, merely raised an eyebrow. Outrageous slander, Miss Kane. My athlete, Jamal Washington, ran a clean world record time. Let's focus on the winner. But Kane hadn't finished. She produced a small laminated copy of the stadium surveillance footage, zoomed in on the trackside drain where Jamal had disposed of the pills. And let's talk about the supplements. My people saw Washington dumping a bottle of Noxinex, a compound designed to accelerate neurological response, just 2 nights ago at Northwood High. He refused your orders, Thorne. He chose to run clean, but you still tried to manipulate the competition around him. The revelation stunned the crowd. It was proof of Thorne's ruthless strategy, but it was also a testament to Jamal's integrity. He had won despite his manager, not because of him. Thorne, realizing he was cornered, turned his calculated anger on Jamal. You idiot. You risked everything. You could have been guaranteed. I took you from nothing and you spit on the chance to become a legend. Jamal, standing tall in his uniform, the gold medal now draped around his neck, met Thorne's glare with the steady confidence he'd found on the track. You didn't take me from nothing, Mr. Thorne. You tried to buy me for nothing. My speed is mine. My win is mine. The record is clean and the contract is over. The words, the contract is over, weren't just a declaration. They were the ultimate victory. Thorne's betrayal of trust, his attempted sabotage, and the introduction of a banned substance, even if refused, constituted a fundamental breach of their agreement's morality clauses. Jamal's local lawyer, who had been on standby thanks to a tip-off from Coach Reynolds, immediately stepped in and served Thorne with termination papers, using Kane's evidence and the clear conflict of interest as leverage. Silas Thorne, the mighty manager, was left stranded on the track, exposed and defeated by the very integrity he tried to crush. The return. The flight home was quieter, the baggage lighter. The gold medal was real and the record was his, but the fame no longer felt like a terrifying cage. He had won the race of his life, but more importantly, he had won his freedom. The first thing Jamal did upon returning to his city wasn't a press conference or a victory lap. It was a pilgrimage back to the familiar, comforting rhythm of home. He bypassed the new, quiet house and went straight to the old neighborhood. He found his parents, not at the new address, but back at the community center kitchen where Auntie Loretta worked, helping to serve a charity meal. His father was there too, laughing as he fixed a broken water faucet. They had missed the noise, the purpose, and the shared struggle of their community. The embrace from his mother was fierce and tearful, a silent acknowledgement of the fear and pride of the last few weeks. "You came back, baby," Loretta whispered into his shoulder, her spatula of truth forgotten on the counter. "You won the race, but you came back to us. That's the real gold." Mr. Dennis simply clapped him on the back. "We sold the new house, Flash. Too quiet. We're working with the center now. Your speed gave us the cushion, son, but we found our purpose right back where we started. The new track." Jamal's journey ended not with an endorsement deal but with a new mission. He used the remaining portion of his clean signing bonus and, with the help of his parents and Coach Reynolds, established a foundation called the Rhythm Runners. Its purpose was simple: to secure funding to renovate the crumbling track at Northwood High and launch a mentorship program for young, talented athletes from low-income communities. The goal wasn't just to find speed, but to cultivate clean speed and integrity. His two best friends were the first recruits. Miko, with his meticulous research skills, became the official program analyst, creating training schedules based on honest, hard-earned metrics. Chaz, finally finding a useful purpose for his hands, focused on securing grants and fixing up equipment. Jamal, the junior world champion, was no longer a product. He was a mentor. He was back on the dusty, imperfect track where he started, but now he ran with purpose. He stood one afternoon watching a group of kids, full of raw, kinetic energy, exploding from the starting blocks. He saw a young boy, maybe 10 years old, lagging behind but grinning fiercely, absolutely free in his run. Jamal smiled, feeling the familiar joyful pressure in his own legs. He had faced the world stage, defeated the cheat, and preserved his character. His talent had lifted his family, but his integrity had saved his soul. The journey from the third-floor apartment to the world record was complete, but his truest work, running for the pure, uncompromised love of the sport and lifting others along the way, had just begun. Dear viewer, if you've watched up to this point, thank you for your support. I have a small request. If you enjoy my stories, you can subscribe to the channel, and don't hesitate to share your thoughts about the stories in the comments. Enjoy watching. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video.